Hello my friends, welcome to my corner. I was asking myself the other day, how can I possibly thank you for being a part of this journey? Okay, that didn't quite work out the way that I had planned, so let's try this again. Hello my friends, welcome to my corner. I was thinking the other day, asking myself, how can I possibly thank you for being a part of this journey that has now lasted 4 years. We are celebrating 4 years of Jorge's Corner right now. And I had to admit that the answer is I just can't. Okay, there's just no way that I can thank you for being a part of this community. But I thought to myself, at least I can put together a book haul, show you some of the books, some of the movies, some of the albums that have accumulated as usual since the beginning of this year, as a matter of fact, because it's been quite a while since I did the last one. So let me show you what I have. We're going to start with the usual birthday presents, gifts. As you may know, as I have told you before, for my birthday, for Christmas, what I do is I get usually one book, one movie, and one album. Sometimes I manage to sneak in a couple more things, and that's what happened this time too. So I have two books, one film, and one album. So let me start with the album so that we leave the books for last. What I got this time was the Final, this greatest hits album by Wham. It's really good. It has all the classics, all the hits like Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, Careless Whisper, Last Christmas, Everything She Wants, A Different Corner, all of the good stuff. I really enjoyed it. I just went with this one on a hunch. I knew a couple of songs, maybe 3 or 4 of them. And I thought to myself, wow, I really like the songs that I know, so let's give it a shot. And I was not disappointed. For the film, what I did was I got a film that was one of my favorites. It has always been one of my favorites. I watched it when I was a kid. I count it as one of the 10 movies that changed my life. I think I did a video. Yeah, I did a video on that like many, many years ago. So it's See No Evil, Hear No Evil with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Let me tell you, if you want to have a good laugh, okay, a good comedy from the 80s, this is from 1989, okay, so check it out, okay, check it out, especially if you're having one of those difficult days, and you just want to laugh. This is a really good one. And for the books, as I told you, I managed to get two of them this time. One of them is kind of mandatory reading for me, and I would say for pretty much everybody. Venezuelan literature. Okay, I will admit that I believe that when it comes to prose, I have not read anything from Venezuela. You know how it is in Venezuelan literature. We have Doña Bárbara by Rómulo Gallegos. It's like a huge classic of the good old novela de la tierra, or the novel of the land. But I wanted to read something else, and I got this one by Arturo Uslar Pietri, Las Lanzas Coloradas, or The Red Lances. So I am really looking forward to reading it and to sharing my ideas with you on this one, because many great authors and many critics have praised this novel as a landmark of Latin American literature in the 20th century. So there's that to look forward to. And the other one is spiritual reading. I do that podcast on spiritual reading. It's a book that I read in Spanish a very long time ago now, maybe a few years ago. In Spanish, the title is Cuentos de un Peregrino Ruso. So, Tales of a Russian Pilgrim. But in English, it is known as The Way of a Pilgrim. So I wanted to read it in English. I noticed that there was a Penguin Classics edition, and I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to reread this book, share my ideas with you on it also. Many of these things that I'm going to show you, if not most of them, I do plan to tell you about them when I get the chance to read them. So please be on the lookout for that. I know it's difficult because every time I have a book haul and I show you like 30 books or something like that, of course it's difficult to make videos on all of those things, but I do try my best. And then maybe, sometimes I lose enthusiasm for one of the things that I got. It seemed like a good idea at the time, kind of thing, Okay, I have a book by Roald Dahl, the BFG. I showed you The Witches in a previous book haul. I haven't read it yet, but these are books that I want to read because they are not really part of my childhood, so I'm trying to catch up on the things that I have missed. To give you another example, Dr. Seuss, it was not really part of the childhood of many people in Argentina for some reason, so there's those gaps there, those lacunae right there to fill out. Many of these are from library sales, others are from half-price books. Very rarely you're going to find new books in the hauls that I do. I found a double feature of films by Wolfgang Petersen. This one has Air Force One, classic, and In the Line of Fire. So you have Harrison Ford, Clint Eastwood, both of them directed by Wolfgang Petersen. So I thought that was a great combination. And the same time, the same day at the library sale, I found Where Eagles Dare. So I have more of Clint Eastwood right here to check out. I have seen this film. It's one of the great war classics, and I want to watch it again, so I was like, it's $1. It's easier than just going to another library and getting it from there, and I can watch it whenever I feel like it. So yeah, you can probably tell I don't do a lot of streaming. I'm an old school kind of person. I like the physical media. They also had Jaws, so I thought, this is celebrating an anniversary, I believe. Now I can't really see what it says right here, but well, this is the 20th anniversary collector's edition, and the copyright says 2000. So you do the math, because I can't. Okay, I'm a word person or a letter person, not much of a numbers person. Same library, I found Pablo Neruda's Los Versos del Capitán, or the Captain's Verses, and the cool edition about this one, the cool thing about this one is that this edition is from New Directions, and it's a bilingual edition, so you get the text in Spanish and the text in English. I read it in both, and it's a very good translation by Donald D. Walsh. So highly recommend this book. It's romantic poetry, so if you like the romantic Neruda, the Neruda of the 20 Poemas de Amor or the 100 Sonetos de Amor, this is another one that not many people mention, so definitely check it out if that is your cup of tea. Then I have something by Hiromi Kawakami, okay? The 10 Loves of Nishino. I have read her, quite a few books by her. Actually, my favorite is The Briefcase. I think another title for that one is Strange Weather in Tokyo. I think those are the two titles of the same book. Other books by her, I haven't been that crazy about, but I want to read this one. So we'll see how that goes. I have here, and I'm going to show you others, right? So these are scattered all over the place, but I got some gifts from my wonderful students. And I got this one, Safe Haven by Nicholas Sparks. Okay, so I remember when the movie came out, and I remember seeing the trailer, so it sounds like a good story. So let's see what that brings. And then some of these, I'll be honest with you, are just gonna go right back to the library sale where I got them. For example, The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I wanted to read something that was young adult, sort of to see what young people read, what they like, and to try to figure out why they like it. I read this and I watched the movie. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I found it a little bit hard to believe, that there are kids the age of these characters who actually talk or speak and write the way these do. But that whole idea with verisimilitude is probably not one of the strong points of this kind of literature. But for what it's worth, I thought it was okay, as they say in the movie. I went to, let me put these together right here. I went to the Goodwill store one day with my mother, and I found two books that I thought, one of them I really needed to have, and then another one was one of those situations where you go like, hey, let's check it out. I have read Kate DiCamillo before. I haven't read The Tale of Despero, which is the one that I really want to read, but I read, let me see, it was the one about the rabbit. I can't remember the title of the book right now, but this is The Tiger Rising. And I thought it was good, okay? It wasn't as good as the other one that I read by her. It's probably not her masterpiece, but this is the kind of book, for young adults, kids, that you can read very, very quickly. I like tigers, just like Jorge Luis Borges, so I thought, let's check it out, and I was not disappointed. And the other one that they had at the Goodwill store that day was The Silence by Don DeLillo, of course, the last one so far that he has published. It was one of the Don DeLillos that, of course, I had read, but I did not have a copy. I'm missing a copy of Falling Man and Great Jones Street also. So I found this one. It was at the Goodwill store, very, very affordable. So, I have read it already, but I read it when it came out, so I can't really tell you that much about it because I don't remember. And I also had to complete my collection of the Nobel Prize in Literature, so I was missing the latest winner, because when I read her, and I did a video on this book if you're interested, Human Acts by Han Kang, what I did was I got it from the library. So I was like, I should have a copy of something by her, because I have a copy right now of at least one book by every winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. So I got this on paperback. And I think, this is of what I have read by her, the one that I enjoyed, quote unquote, the most. And I put it between quotation marks because, as you may know, it's kind of a really, really tough to read type of story. Let me show you some albums so that we alternate a little bit here, just 3 albums. This was close to my birthday, actually. I went to Half Price Books and I found the Greatest Hits album by Al Stewart. My memory is doing the weirdest things these days, okay? So this is really good, as was to be expected. I really liked Year of the Cat and his other album that I have shown you before, Past, Present, and Future. So I was like, why not, And I loved it. At the library, I believe that was the same day, they also had this interesting Kool and the Gang collection, Greatest Hits. It says Greatest Hits and More, and the and more there is for the fact that some of these are kind of like remixed versions of the songs. So that I wasn't that crazy about. I like to hear the original, but they were pretty good remixes anyway. And then close to the beginning of the year, I decided to get something by that band Cutting Crew. Okay, you have heard. I'm not gonna say probably. You have heard. I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight. Okay, so I was like, okay, let's check it out. But the thing is, they didn't really have at an affordable, good price one of their greatest hits albums. So I was like, let's just go with their debut album right here, which is titled Broadcast. Okay, great stuff. I was so amazed by this album. There was a song, Life in a Dangerous Time, that you may have heard in a movie called let me see if I can remember, Whitewater Summer. It was with Kevin Bacon, like one of his early movies. Really, really good movie too, by the way. Excellent stuff, when it comes to like interpreting it and all that. But I really, really enjoyed this album, so I was very happy about that one. I have some other albums here, but let's skip that for a while. Let me show you some other stuff. I also found some movies. All of these are from library sales. This one was one of the latest ones that I found. You know this one, of course, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I really liked the premise of the movie, this idea of the guy who decides to take a day off, When I watched it, however, it was not one of my favorite John Hughes. So I was like, okay, let me check it out again. Let's see if my ideas about it have changed. And then another day, also at the library, I found 3 movies altogether that I thought were great. So I have Say Anything, one of those, another one of those good old 80s romantic movies, classics, etc. I also found Stranger Than Fiction, which is a movie that I have watched and discussed in one of my classes with my students. Now this one has a little bit of a dark element to it. And I don't know if this was because the class where we talked about this one was a very early class or what, but the discussion did not really yield the type of results that I usually have with these movie discussions in class. It's a great film, though. The idea of this character, this person who realizes that he is a character in a novel. More to come about that, by the way, that, metafiction type of thing. And then I have, of course, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This was a movie that I planned to discuss with my students at some point, but that semester that I offered it as an option, none of my classes chose it. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, it gets kind of dark too, I don't want to get too dark with these things, especially because I teach early classes, so you have to kind of, put a little bit of color, of energy right there in the discussions. Half Price Books, I found Colorless, let me get the name right, okay, Tsukuru Tasaki by, of course, Haruki Murakami. I've read a lot by Murakami, but I've never done a video on him. I am still debating, which one to share my thoughts on with you. So this is a good option. I haven't read it yet. It's like almost 300 pages or so. Maybe I could check this out during the summer if I like it, and share my ideas with you. And then I also found on clearance, so this was like $3, the Carnal Prayer Mat. This is a really old Chinese classic that you may have heard about. So I want to check it out. I want to see what it's like, because it's been on my mental reading list for quite a while right now. Okay, 3 more albums. I was really happy one day. I went to the same type of library sale that I usually go to, and I had just been talking about this album with my brother. Okay, I was like, oh, I wish I could find this Greatest Hits by Joy Division, and they had it right there for $1. I was ecstatic, as you can imagine. This was back at the beginning of the year, probably in January. So this is great. Okay, I don't know if I would call myself a die-hard Joy Division fan to the point that I want to get all of the albums that they released, but I think with this one, you know, I didn't go wrong with this one. I can tell you that for sure. This was at the next 2 were at Half Price Books. This is The Essential 10 Years After. Okay, this was a band that basically my father introduced me to them. He had one of their albums. I can't remember the title right now because they also changed the title in Spanish, in the Spanish edition, you know. But I really like this type of music. I heard this Greatest Hits kind of thing, and it was great. And the other, I think I don't have any more albums. I hope I'm not lying to you, but no, I don't think so. So I found at Half Price Books during a road trip Pop by Erasure. Okay, these are the first 20 singles. Then they did the next 20 singles. You can do like a top 40 or something like that. But this is the kind of stuff that I am interested in. Okay, the 80s stuff, the classics and all that. So I listened to it a couple of times. I was, you know, dancing all over the room, believe it or not. And I thought it was just fantastic. Okay, some more books right here. Now we go with some stuff that I also found at Half Price Books. I wanted to read this, The Pigman by Paul Sindo. You know, Paul Sindo was famous for one of his plays. He received the Pulitzer Prize, I believe. Let me give you the title. I'm sure you have heard of it. The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds. Okay, that was his play, his hit. But this is a kind of a young adult type of novel. And I thought the story was interesting, so I was like, I want to check it out. At a library sale, this is not from Half Price Books, I found the collected poems of Wallace Stevens. I do need to read Wallace Stevens a lot more than I have. I've probably read some isolated poems by him, so this is right there somewhere in my future. I do have the other one, the Palm, it was something with the Palm, okay? It's like kind of like his best poems, but I was like, okay, this is $1, why not? You know, let's check it out. I also found something by Kenji Miyazawa. I'm going to tell you, I have a book by Kenji Miyazawa with his stories, and I did not really enjoy them as much as I was expecting, but I have heard very good things about Night on the Galactic Railroad. So this is probably his masterpiece, and I do want to check it out, and I want to see what I think about that. As you know, I am interested in winners of the Nobel Prize in Literature. And one day at a Half Price Books during a kind of a little road trip, I found on clearance for $2 Ake, The Years of Childhood by Wally Soyinka. Sorry. And this is a memoir by him, kind of a, you know, creative nonfiction, maybe you could consider it, but mostly a memoir, not a play, which is what he is mostly known for. But still, I am really looking forward to exploring his work a little bit more in depth and sharing my ideas with you on him. I'm going to show you another book by him that I also got at a library sale, I believe. No, it was actually at Half Price Books. And then also at Half Price Books, the next 2, I found Gombrovich's Cosmos. Okay, this is something that has been recommended to me many times. I have read Ferdy Dirk, or however that is supposed to be pronounced. Did not really like it, so I want to check this one out. Maybe give that other book another chance. Maybe it was not the right time for me, so we'll see about that. And also the second, this is the second part of Canetti's autobiography or memoirs, The Torch in My Ear. So I need to read the first one, which is somewhere back here. Yeah, The Tongue Set Free. So I do need to read that one, and then I have this one, and then of course I would need to find the third part. Okay, let me stop right now and I'll get the other stuff, put it here, and I'll share that with you. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the rest of the books here. The cat is out of the room. That's wonderful stuff. So, The Gossamer Years, a diary by a noble woman of Heian, Japan. This is something that I would like to read as a comparison in the context, back to back maybe with the Pillow book. I've done a video also on the Pillow book. This was from a library sale, so it was very affordable. Also from a library sale, I found Child of God by Cormac McCarthy. This is one of the books by McCarthy that I had not read. I haven't actually read that much by him. I've read No Country for Old Men, The Road, and All the Pretty Horses. So I do want to read more by him. I have that copy of Blood Meridian from since, like such a long time ago that I've told you about before. I think that was one of my reading goals for 2023. So you know how it is. So many books, so little time. This happened maybe about a month ago. I went to have dinner with a friend of mine, and while I was having dinner, my mother, who drove me because she needed to do something around the area, went to a library, stopped by the library, and she found a book for me. This is by André Bernard, and it's titled Now All We Need Is a Title, Famous Book Titles and How They Got That Way. Really interesting stuff, I thought. I was like, wow, a book about the titles of books. For example, I learned from this one that the original title for Don DeLillo's White Noise was going to be Panasonic. I had no idea about that, and it includes the titles for many, important, just very important authors like Brave New World, how the title was chosen, For Whom the Bell Tolls, the story behind that, The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, just, The Great Gatsby, and many, many more. So I thought this was really interesting. It's a quick read because it's a very slim volume, so very, very interesting stuff. A couple of books from my students, just like the one that I showed you before. I have the Heptameron by Marguerite de Navarre. So this is a classic, of course, kind of a response or a book that is in dialogue with the Cameron by Boccaccio. So great stuff. And then Nights in Rodanthe from also Nicholas Sparks, that I also thought, included a very interesting story. It's really about an interesting story, so I am going to check these out at some point, when my reading list allows. There was a book that I have, I believe I have called this book Perfect in one of my videos, and I do believe that. Okay, this was something that a friend let me borrow, I want to say maybe in 2011 or something like that. So it's been quite a while, 2011, 2012. I never had a copy, okay? So I read it at the time. I gave it back to this person because I do always give back the books that are, that are lent to me, unlike some people who never have returned my books. That's why I don't let people borrow my books anymore. I just buy them a copy. So Cloud Atlas, okay? I needed to have a copy of this. So here it is. I found it at a library, so really, really affordable. This is a new book. It just came out, a new translation of Diary of a Country Priest by Jorge Bernanos. So I am very, enthusiastic about this one because I want to compare it to the movie, which was the first film that I have seen by Robert Bresson. So I did not have a very good experience with the movie. I ended up liking the work of Bresson later on, but not at that time. I have a beautiful thing right here to show you. This is also new. It was just published. I bought it before it was even published. And this is the first volume of Proust in a new translation into Spanish published by Alfaguara. I read Proust, I can tell you exactly when. It was the year 2015, okay? And I didn't have time to read him, but I found the time. And that's how it happened. And it was, of course, a mind-blowing experience. And, when you read Proust, you're like, I want to reread him, right? This is the perfect excuse for me, okay? Because it's in Spanish, I would be reading him in a different language. I still don't have the courage to read him in French, so this is kind of a very good opportunity for me. I don't know when they are going to publish the other volumes, but that is the first one, and it's right there. It's kind of like somewhere close to the top of my priority list, so we'll see how that goes. Half-price books, I found Aerosmith by Sinclair Lewis. As you know, I'm doing the series on the Nobel Prize in Literature winners. This would be a very good choice for me because this was apparently Lewis's favorite of the novels that he had written. Let me show you some movies now. I'm running out of breath here. Okay, that was good. So The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that Indiana Jones movie, I watched it again and I enjoyed it a lot more than I had the first time that I had seen it, so that is good. This is a funny movie with Jack Black, Be Kind, Rewind. check it out. You know, it's about a video store. So and video stores are, or were, some of my favorite places. You know, so that was a really, really fun movie to watch. I finally got a copy of Coraline. I read the book about half a year ago or so, and I rewatched the movie, and I wanted to have a copy. You know, it's one of those movies that I watched at the movie theater when it came out. You know, there's kind of like a special connection that I have to it. I see a Nicholas Sparks kind of theme right here because I got a copy of The Notebook. I need to watch this movie. You know, I haven't seen it, so many people are talking about it. So many people tell me it's their favorite. I need to check it out. This one is probably going back where it came from. It's from the library sale. It's by Joseph Strick, okay, The Balcony, an adaptation of a work by Jean Genet. And it was good, okay, I got it, but I don't think I'm gonna rewatch this, okay? So I really like Joseph Strick's work. He's the one who adapted Ulysses, okay? He adapted Tropic of Cancer. He was great at adapting unadaptable things, but this one in particular did not work for me. This is a movie that I watched when I was a kid, kind of a kid, Big, with Tom Hanks, about this kid who wishes he were a grown-up. Really good stuff, okay, really fun, also very deep, okay, surprisingly, because you wouldn't expect it to be, but it is. There's quite a bit of subtext right there going on. Another one that's going to go back, I'm afraid, is There's Something About Mary. Okay, another movie that so many people were talking about, and I was like, okay, I need to watch it, even if it is so that I can say I didn't like it. I did not, you know, dislike it or anything, but I thought it was just okay. You know, this kind of humor is not for me, for what it's worth, you know. And, of course, I had to have a copy of The Never-Ending Story 2. I remember being a little bit disappointed when this one came out. Or not when it came out, but when I watched it. I don't even remember when that was. But I was a little bit disappointed because, as you know, they changed the actors, you know, the main actors. And, you know, Bastien and Atreyu are different. So I was like, it's kind of weird, you know, getting used to that. But this covers a little bit more of the book than does the first movie. It's not by the same director or anything. This one was directed by George Miller. The first one is by Wolfgang Petersen, of course. So I just needed to have a copy of this. You know, The Never-Ending Story is like a huge part of my life. So there it is. Library sale also. El Viejo y el Mar by Ernest Hemingway. How's your Spanish? Do you know what that means? El Viejo y el Mar. Of course you do. The Old Man and the Sea. Okay, I want to talk about this one for one of my videos in Spanish. I also got The Love of a Good Woman by Alice Munro, one of the books that I was missing by her. I started reading it, and honestly, the first story, which is the one that bears the title, I don't know, it was just like one of those average stories from her. I really love Alice Munro, by the way, if I haven't said that before. She's one of my favorite authors ever. I absolutely love her. So more to come about that. I also found a really nice copy of La aventura de un fotógrafo en La Plata by Adolfo Bioy Casares, so The Adventure of a Photographer in La Plata. I thought it was a nice addition, great excuse to reread it, so here it is. I also have Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. I need to read her. I have read by her The Lake only, and it's not her masterpiece. This was a sensation when it was published. So this would be nice for my series on Japanese literature, of course. And then I showed you something by Shoyinka before, but this is the one that I really want to explore because it's one of his most well-known plays, Death and the King's Horseman. And I was able to find this edition, which is by Norton. It's one of those critical editions, so it has the play and it has a lot of extra material to it. So be on the lookout for a video on this one because it's definitely coming up sometime in the future. We'll see when. Another book that somebody let me borrow, this really was a very long time ago, and I read it, devoured it, and absolutely loved it, was The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene, okay? And I always thought, you know, I think at that point, this was so early that at that point I had basically most of the books that I had read, I had a copy of. Because even if I had gotten it from the library or something like that, I eventually ended up buying a copy. Of course, this was completely not sustainable. You know, I could not do that for the rest of my life. But I was like, okay, I found it, you know, at the library also, library sale. Why not? You know, let's get a copy finally. Then I have a book here that is mine right now, but it's going to belong to my father basically in a few days. History of Salt. This is, it's a book of history. He likes to read that, so I'm going to give him this for Father's Day. So that's going to be one of his presents that day. Then I have some few more things to show you. I have this really nice copy of El Coronel no tiene quien le escriba by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. No one writes to a colonel, of course. I had copies of this, but I was really looking for this one. It was affordable. I couldn't help it. I just couldn't resist. It was a moment of weakness for me, and I just had to get it. That day, also at Half Price Books, they also had a copy of this film that won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film in 1971. And that is The Garden of the Finzi Continis. So I want to check it out again because it's a movie that I have seen only once. Another movie, just like See No Evil, Hear No Evil, if you really, really want to laugh. I watched this for the first time recently. My Cousin Vinny, okay? I mean, this is hilarious, okay? This is amazing at so many levels. So check it out if you haven't, because it's one of those great US comedies from the 1990s. I believe it was 92. Let's not be lazy here. Let's check it out. Actually, yeah, 1992. They also had a volume of essays on Proust. Okay, so since I'm planning to reread him, I thought I would look at some critical works before I do that. So here it is. At a library sale, I found the following 4 items. Seven and the Ragged Tiger by Duran Duran. This is the first actual album by Duran Duran outside of a greatest hits that I have. I really liked it. I had listened to Rio before, and I don't know, it didn't quite speak to me, but this one I really, really enjoyed. Chariots of Fire, that film that also got the Academy Award. This was back in 1981. Yes, it was. I want to watch it again because the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know, this was kind of boring. So let's check it out again with a different view, and more experience of watching films in my backpack, as we say in Spanish. They also had this little volume by Jean-Paul Sartre, Existentialism as a Humanism. It's a classic. It's kind of a lecture that he gave, but it also includes other things. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this one, hopefully in the near future. And then I decided to give Dashiell Hammett another chance. Okay, there's this weird thing with me and Dashiell Hammett. I have read, of course, Red Harvest and The Maltese Falcon. I did not really like them. Okay, I was like, okay, I understand why he is such an important figure, but of course the problem is that I had read Raymond Chandler before. So you know how it is. It's like if you're coming from Raymond Chandler, who learned a lot from Dashiell Hammett, there's that issue right there. But I found this very tiny volume, Woman in the Dark. I wonder if it's a novella. It was serialized. It was published in a serial form. So I was like, okay, let's give him another chance. Let's see how I do this time. There was something that I wanted to have in physical form that I had like in the Kindle. And this is volume 2. Unfortunately, they didn't have volume 1, but of the complete stories of Sherlock Holmes. So Arthur Conan Doyle. So here it is. I wish they had number 1, but maybe I can find it someday at Half Price Books. And then I have 2 very long novels, okay, and actually a couple of albums to show you, like a LP, vinyl at the very end. This one is Gregory David Roberts' Shantaram. Okay, this one, right? This huge novel. The story seems interesting to me. They had it at the library and those sales that they do. So I was like, it's a good idea for me to check it out right now. And then I have Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch, another classic that won, yes it did, the Pulitzer Prize. So I like to read a long novel every now and then, and I thought these were good options right there. And let me show you those 2 vinyl records that I found. These are from Half Price Books. So I have the debut album by Quarter Flash. Okay, I do like the 80s. You don't need to ask me that. So they had this at it was $8. So I still haven't been able to listen to it because I have the player that works is actually at my office, and because we are on summer break and I don't teach during the summer, I need to go to the office and get that player so that I can finally listen to these records. And another thing is this is such a relief because all of the stuff that I have just shown you, now it can go to the office where I have a lot more space than I do here in my room. So that's what I'm going to be doing probably in a few days, in a couple of days. And the other one that I found, I couldn't believe they had this. This is an original, okay? It's not like a reissue or anything like that. And you know what this is, right? Of course you do. This is Candio by The Cars. The Cars are just one of the best US bands ever, okay? So, and my brother believes that this is their masterpiece when it comes to their discography. So I am really looking forward to listening to these two. Okay, so as usual, I was planning for a quick video, you know, a short video, and it ended up being a monster. You know, that happens to me all the time. I wish that would happen to me when I write. You know, instead of ending up with a 3-page short story, I could end up with something of the scope of Don Quixote, but unfortunately, you know, that doesn't seem to be the case, but we do what we can, right? I hope you enjoyed this book haul. Please let me know, have you read anything? Have you listened to any of these albums? Do you have any favorites in the movies that I have shown you or anything? Please just let me know in the comments section, or if you want to recommend anything else by any of these artists, writers, etc. that I have shared. I'm also always very open to that, and recommendations are always very welcome. Thank you once again for being here. Okay, I really value that. This is Jorge's corner. This is your corner. Okay, so I am so happy that I have been able to continue with this, with your help, of course, for 4 years. So we'll see what the next year brings. You know, we'll see. I always think, you know, as long as I can do these videos, I'll keep doing them, unless, of course, you tell me to just shut up and not do it anymore. So thank you so much for stopping by, and have a fantastic day.